The slave market on planet Vorthak was busy that day. Many different alien creatures walked around looking at the prisoners who were chained up like animals. The air smelled bad from too many bodies packed together in one place. Large metal cages lined the walls filled with beings from across the galaxy. Captain Lee Dong-woo stood in heavy chains that cut into his wrists. His Earth Defense Force uniform was torn and dirty, but his dark eyes still burned with anger. The human soldier had been captured 3 days ago when his ship was blown up while defending a mining colony from alien raiders. He looked around the auction hall and counted the guards. He saw the exits and the weapon positions. His military training never stopped working. Even when he was a prisoner, Dong-woo was always thinking, always planning, always ready for a chance to fight back. The auction master was a huge lizard creature with purple scales and yellow eyes. His name was Grix, and he enjoyed his job too much. Grix walked up to a platform in the center of the room and banged a metal staff on the ground. All the alien buyers stopped talking and looked at him. There were many different species in the crowd. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others had blue skin and tentacles instead of hair. A few looked almost human but with strange colored eyes and pointed ears. Grix pointed at Dong-woo with his clawed hand. The human was dragged forward by 2 robot guards. The chains around his feet made it hard to walk, but Dong-woo kept his head up. He would not show weakness to these creatures, ladies and gentlemen of the galaxy. Grix announced in a voice that echoed through the hall. Today we have something special, a primitive human warrior from the backwater planet called Earth. These creatures are known for being stubborn, but they make good workers in the deep mines. The crowd laughed and made jokes about humans. Some had heard that Earth was a small planet with weak technology. They thought humans were just another species they could buy and sell like any other animal. A rich alien noble stepped forward from the crowd. His name was Lord Keth, and he was from the Vorthak royal family. Lord Keth was twice as tall as a human with gray skin and 4 arms. He wore expensive clothes covered in jewels that showed how wealthy he was. Lord Keth walked around Dong-woo like he was examining a piece of meat. He poked the human soldier with one finger and laughed when Dong-woo did not react. "These humans break easily," Lord Keth said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I heard their whole planet fell to our forces in just a few days." Dong-woo felt his anger grow, but he stayed quiet. Earth had not fallen. The war was still going on, and humanity was fighting back harder than these aliens could imagine. But he kept this information to himself. He was waiting and watching for the right moment. A smaller alien with blue skin and 4 arms raised one hand. 500 credits. "For the human," it said in a high voice. "I need workers for my crystal farms on the outer rim. 700. Called another voice from the back of the crowd. The bidding continued back and forth, while Dong-woo stood still and listened. He was learning about the different aliens, their languages, and their technology. Every piece of information could be useful later. The auction master was getting ready to sell Dong-woo to the highest bidder when Lord Keth suddenly stepped forward again with a mean smile on his face. "I will take this human for 1,000 credits, he announced. "But first, let me test the merchandise." Without any warning, Lord Keth raised his massive hand and slapped Dong-woo hard across the face. The sound echoed through the entire auction hall like a gunshot. The human soldier's head snapped to the side, and blood came from his mouth. The crowd burst into laughter and cheering. They loved seeing the proud human warrior brought down. Lord Keth smiled wider and spoke to the crowd. "Yes, they break just as easily as I thought. These humans are nothing special, but something strange happened." Dong-woo did not fall down or cry out in pain. Instead, he slowly turned his head back to look directly at Lord Keth. A cold smile spread across his bloody lips. His dark eyes seemed to glow with something that made even the biggest aliens feel scared. "You just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life," Dong-woo said in a calm, quiet voice that somehow carried to every corner of the hall. The laughter stopped immediately. Something in the human soldier's tone made every alien in the room feel afraid. They could not understand why, but they all knew that something very bad was about to happen. In the sudden silence, a low humming sound began to fill the air. It was quiet at first, but it grew stronger with each passing second. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The alien security guards looked around in confusion, trying to find where the humming was. Coming from their computers and sensors, could not identify the source. Chief Security Officer. Vex started barking orders into his communication device. All units report. He shouted, "We have an unknown signal. Find it now." But Dongwu just stood there, with his smile getting bigger. He knew exactly what that sound meant, and he knew what was going to happen next. The humming was getting louder and more aliens were starting to panic. Some tried to run for the exits while others grabbed their weapons. But there was nowhere to run and no weapon that could help them now. The humming sound was not coming from inside the building or even from the planet's surface. High above Vorthak in the darkness of space, something incredible was happening. 30 human warships were slowly appearing out of nowhere. They had been invisible using advanced cloaking technology, but now they were showing themselves. The lead ship was called HMS Incheon, and it was commanded by Admiral Park Ji-hai. She stood on the bridge looking down at the planet below with cold anger in her eyes. Her crew was ready and waiting for her orders. "Admiral, we have confirmed Captain Lee's location," said the communications officer. "The tracking device in his uniform is working. How?" "Long since it was activated," Park asked. She knew the device only turned on when a human soldier was hit or hurt badly. 4 seconds ago, Admiral came. The reply, Admiral Park nodded. The plan was simple, but deadly. Any human soldier who was captured had a special device hidden in their uniform. If they were hurt or tortured, the device would send a signal to any human ships nearby. The message was always the same. Come save us or destroy everything, since saving someone from a heavily defended slave planet was almost impossible. The second option was usually chosen. The whole planet had exactly 1 more second before it would be completely destroyed. Back on the surface, more aliens were running around in fear as their sensors finally detected the massive human fleet above them. Lord Keth stared at Dongwu with growing horror. "What have you done?" he whispered. "I did not do anything," Dongwu replied, still smiling. "You did it. The moment you hit a human soldier, you signed the death order for your entire planet." The auction hall filled with screaming as aliens pushed and fought each other, trying to escape Grix. The auction master dropped his staff and ran toward the nearest exit along with everyone else, but it was too late for all of them. There was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide from what was coming down from space. The humming sound was now so loud it made the ground shake and dust fall from the ceiling. Everyone knew that death was only seconds away. Dongwu looked up at the ceiling as if he could see through it to the human ships above. He had been a prisoner for 3 days, but now he was about to be free, and every alien on this planet was about to learn why you should never hurt a human being. The humming sound grew louder and louder until the whole building started shaking. Chief Security Officer Vex ran around the auction hall screaming orders at his guards, but nobody could find where the strange noise was coming from. All their computers and scanning devices showed nothing. Vex grabbed his communication device and yelled into it. "All security teams report to the auction hall immediately. We have a code red emergency. Find the source of that signal or we are all dead." But Dongwu just stood there in his chains, looking completely calm while chaos erupted around him. His smile grew wider as he watched the panic spread through the crowd of alien buyers. Lord Keth was backing away from the human soldier, with fear written all over his gray face. "Do you want to know what that sound is?" Dongwu asked Lord Keth, in a voice so cold it made the alien noble shiver. "That is the sound of humanity saying goodbye to your world, high above the planet in the darkness of space. 30 human. Warships hung like silent death. The ships had been invisible for hours, waiting and watching. Now they were ready to complete their mission on the bridge of the lead ship, HMS Incheon. Admiral Park Ji-hai stood looking at the planet below through the main viewing screen. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes burned with cold fury. She had lost too many good soldiers to alien slavers, and today would be payback time. Admiral, we have Captain Lee's exact location confirmed, reported communications. Officer Kim Tae-ho. The tracking beacon in his uniform is transmitting perfectly. Admiral Park nodded slowly. How long since the beacon was activated by external impact? She asked, knowing that the special device only worked when a human soldier was struck with serious force. 4 seconds ago, Admiral Kim replied, checking his instruments. Admiral Park felt a grim satisfaction fill her chest. The plan was brutal but simple. Every human soldier carried a tiny beacon hidden in their uniform. If they were captured and hurt badly, the beacon would activate and send a signal to the nearest human fleet. The signal carried a clear message: extract the soldier or execute protocol. Since extracting a soldier from a heavily defended slave world was almost impossible, execute protocol was the usual choice. Execute protocol meant complete planetary destruction. No exceptions, no survivors, no mercy. The Admiral looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They all knew what was about to happen, and they all agreed it was necessary. Humanity had tried being peaceful with the galaxy, but the aliens kept treating humans like animals. Now it was time to show these creatures what humans were really capable of. Admiral, all weapons are charged and ready, reported Weapons Officer Choi Min-ho from his station. The quantum disruption cannons are locked onto the planet's core. Fire on my command. Park replied, then activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Admiral Park speaking. Today, we send a message to every slaver in the galaxy. Humanity does not forgive, and humanity does not forget. Back on the planet's surface, the auction hall was in complete chaos. Aliens of all species were running and screaming as their sensors finally detected the massive human fleet hanging above them. Some tried to reach their ships, others looked for underground shelters, but most just ran in circles. Lord Keth stared at Dong-Wu with growing horror. "What have you done?" he whispered, his forearms shaking. "With fear, I have not done anything." Dong-Wu replied, his smile now looking like that of a hunting predator. "You did this. The moment you struck a human soldier, you signed the death warrant for every living thing on this planet. The auction master." Grix dropped his expensive staff and ran toward the exit along with hundreds of other terrified aliens. But the exits were jammed with too many bodies trying to escape at once. Many aliens were being crushed in the panic. Dong-Wu watched the chaos with satisfaction. These creatures had spent years buying and selling humans like property. Now they were about to learn what happened when you hurt something that belonged to humanity. The humming sound was getting so loud that cracks appeared in the walls of the auction hall. Dust and small pieces of stone fell from the ceiling as the entire building shook like it was in an earthquake up in space. Admiral Park looked at the countdown timer on her command screen. 1 second remained. She turned to her weapons officer and spoke the words that would change galactic history forever. "Fire all quantum disruption cannons," she ordered. "Turn this slave-trading cesspool into cosmic dust." 30 beams of pure destruction lanced down from the human fleet. Each beam contained enough energy to destroy a continent. The planet Vorthak, home to billions of aliens and center of the galaxy's largest slave trade network, had exactly 0 seconds left to exist. The first beam struck the northern hemisphere and instantly turned everything within 1,000 kilometers into vapor. The second beam hit the southern continent, sending shock waves through the planet's core. As more beams rained down, the very atoms of the world began to break apart on the surface. Dong Wo-Oh felt the chains around his wrists snap as the building shook violently. He was free, but it did not matter anymore. In a few seconds, he would be dead along with everyone else on the planet. But he was not afraid. He had done his duty as a human soldier, and now his people were making sure that this planet would never again be used to hurt humans. The price was his life, but it was worth it. Lord Keth fell to his knees in front of the human soldier. "Please," he begged, tears streaming down. His gray face, "I did not know humans were so powerful. Please make them stop. You should have thought about that before you built your civilization on slavery." Dong Wu replied without any emotion. "Humans do not negotiate with slavers. We erase them." The last thing the aliens saw before complete destruction was Captain Lee Dong-Wu standing tall and proud among the collapsing ruins. A smile of satisfaction on his bloody face as justice finally came from the stars above. The planet Vorthak died in exactly 5 seconds and took every slaver on it straight to hell. Time seemed to move in slow motion as the 5th second finally arrived. In the weapons control room of HMS Incheon, Officer Choi Min-ho had already calculated the exact coordinates needed to destroy the entire planet. His finger pressed the firing button as Admiral Park's final order echoed through the ship. The 30 quantum disruption cannons fired at exactly the same moment, creating a light show that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Each beam was pure concentrated energy, capable of tearing apart the very fabric of reality itself on the planet's surface. Captain Lee Dong-Wu watched Lord Keth's face transform from arrogance to absolute terror as the sky above them began to glow with incoming death. The alien noble who had seemed so powerful just moments before was now crawling on the ground, begging for mercy. "Please stop this," Lord Keth cried, his forearms reaching toward the human soldier. "I will give you anything. Money ships, entire star systems, just make them stop." "It is too late for bargains," Dong-Wu replied calmly as the first beam struck the planet's northern region. "You had your chance to treat humans with respect. Instead, you chose to build an empire on slavery." The first quantum disruption beam hit with the force of 1,000 nuclear weapons. The entire northern continent simply vanished in a flash of white light that was brighter than the system's sun. Everything within a 1,000-kilometer radius was instantly turned into atoms. The second beam struck the southern pole, sending massive shock waves through the planet's core. The ground beneath the auction hall began to crack and split apart as earthquakes shook the entire world. Buildings that had stood for centuries crumbled like sand castles. More beams rained down from space, each one destroying vast sections of the planet. The oceans boiled away into steam. The atmosphere began to burn. The very rocks and metals that made up the world started to break down into their basic elements. Alien ships tried desperately to escape the planet's gravity well and flee into space, but the human fleet had positioned itself to block all escape routes. Not a single slaver would survive this day. The HMS Seoul and HMS Busan systematically destroyed every ship that tried to leave the planet. Inside the collapsing auction hall, the remaining aliens watched in horror as their world died around them. Some prayed to their gods, others cursed the humans, but most just screamed as the reality of their situation finally hit them. "This is impossible," gasped a dying Zephyrian trader as a massive crack opened in the floor beneath him. "No species has weapons this powerful. How can primitive humans destroy an entire planet? You never bothered to learn about humans," Dong-Wu shouted over the sound of the apocalypse. "We are not just another species you can push around. We are apex predators, and you just threatened our pack." The building shook so violently that the remaining chains fell off Dong-Wu's arms, freeing him completely. He stood in the center of the destruction with his arms crossed, watching as cosmic justice was finally served. Through the cracking ceiling, he could see more energy beams coming down from space. The human fleet was not just destroying the planet. They were making sure that nothing would be left. Not even dust would remain when they were finished. Lord Keth tried one last time to crawl toward the human soldier, but a falling beam crushed his legs. The alien noble looked up at Dong-Wu with pain and fear in his dying eyes. "Why," he whispered, "why destroy everything? Because you made the mistake of thinking humans were weak." Dong-Wu replied as the walls began to collapse around them. "You thought we were animals. You could buy and sell. But we are the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. We just needed a reason to show our teeth." The quantum disruption beams were working perfectly. The weapons were designed to unmake matter at the atomic level, turning solid planets into clouds of free-floating particles. It was the most destructive force humanity had ever created, and today it was being used to send a message to the entire galaxy. Other aliens in the hall tried to reach their communication devices to send out distress calls, but the electromagnetic interference from the weapons made all technology useless. Their cries for help would never be heard. As the 5th second ended and the 6th began, Captain Lee Dong-Wu felt a strange peace come over him. He had served his species well. His capture and torture had given humanity the excuse they needed to eliminate the galaxy's largest slave-trading operation. The last thing he saw before the building completely collapsed was the beautiful sight of 30 human warships hanging in space like avenging angels, their weapons still firing beam after beam of pure destruction down onto the dying world planet. Vorthak had been home to 12 billion aliens. It had been the center of galactic slave trade for over 300 years. It had seemed permanent and untouchable, like it would exist forever. But in exactly 5 seconds, it was completely gone. Nothing remained but a cloud of scattered atoms drifting in space. The message was sent and received across the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they were not asking for permission. The news of planet Vorthak's complete destruction traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Within hours, every alien government military force and trading organization knew what had happened. The shock was so great that some species refused to believe the reports at first. On the capital world of the Galactic Trade Federation, emergency sessions were called as panic spread through the ruling councils. President Yilks, a tall creature with purple tentacles for hair, called together every member of the High Council. The meeting room was filled with representatives from dozens of different alien species. All of them were talking at once, creating a noise like 1,000 different animals in distress. The fear in the room was so thick, you could almost taste it. "An entire planet gone in seconds," whispered Council Member Praff, her blue tentacles trembling with terror. 12 billion beings just erased from existence. How is this even possible? Our intelligence reports said humans were a primitive warrior species with basic technology, added General Corvo, who commanded the Federation's military forces. They were supposed to be easy to defeat in battle. Clearly, our intelligence was completely wrong. President Yilix replied, his voice shaking. "These humans have weapons beyond anything we have ever seen. We need to completely change everything we know about Earth and its colonies." Meanwhile, in space near where planet Vorthak used to exist, the human fleet was preparing to leave. Admiral Park Ji-hai stood on the bridge of HMS Incheon, reviewing the mission results. Her face showed satisfaction at a job well done. "Admiral, we have confirmed that Captain Lee was successfully extracted during the final moments communications," Officer Kim Tae-ho reported. "The emergency transporter got him off the planet just before complete destruction." "Good," Admiral Park replied. "Captain Lee will receive the highest honors for his service. His sacrifice made this operation possible." The human Ships activated their cloaking systems again, becoming invisible to alien sensors. But before they departed, Admiral Park had one more task to complete. She ordered her communications officer to broadcast a message on all known alien frequencies. "This is Admiral Park G. High of the Human Defense Fleet," she announced, and her voice was transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. "The planet Vorthak has been eliminated as punishment for enslaving human beings." The message continued. "Any alien government, organization, or individual found participating in the slave trade will face identical consequences. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. And humanity does not negotiate with slavers. Consider this your only warning." The broadcast ended, and the human fleet disappeared into space, leaving behind only empty vacuum where a planet had once existed. But the effects of their action were just beginning to spread across civilized, space-on alien worlds throughout the galaxy's slave markets. Immediately shut down owners of human slaves frantically released their prisoners and begged them not to report their locations to Earth. Some planets began evacuating their populations just because rumors said they had once held human captives, the Ha. Fear was so great that even mentioning the word human in public became dangerous. Many aliens refused to speak about what had happened to Vorthak. They were afraid that even talking about the destruction might somehow bring human warships to there. Worlds on the military world of Korax. General Vortex held an emergency meeting with his top commanders. The room was filled with the greatest military minds from across the Zephyrian Empire, but they all looked like scared children. "We have been fighting humans for 2 years. Vortex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We thought we were winning. We destroyed some of their colonies and captured many prisoners. But now we know the truth," one of his commanders replied. "Those were not victories. Those were tests. They were learning about us, studying our weaknesses, and now they have shown us what they are really capable of," added another officer. "If they can destroy Vorthak in 5 seconds, what could they do to our homeworld, the Zephyrian?" Empire had been humanity's primary enemy in the ongoing war. They had attacked human colonies, enslaved human civilians, and killed thousands of innocent people. Now they realized they had been fighting a species that could erase their entire civilization without breaking a sweat. Similar meetings were happening on hundreds of alien worlds. Military leaders who had once planned attacks on human settlements were now trying to figure out how to surrender before the humans decided to eliminate them. 2. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in just 5 seconds. Humanity, which had been seen as a minor threat, was now recognized as the most dangerous species in known space. Every alien government began emergency preparations to avoid. Humanity's Wrath trade routes that passed near human space were abandoned. Alien ships refused to travel anywhere that humans might be found. Military exercises that had been planned near Earth were canceled immediately. The lesson was clear to every intelligent species in the galaxy. Humans protected their own kind, and the price for harming even a single human was total annihilation. Nothing less than complete destruction would satisfy their need for revenge. Some alien philosophers tried to understand how such a violent response could come from a species that had seemed relatively peaceful. Others argued that humanity had always been dangerous, but had simply been hiding their true nature. But most aliens did not waste time trying to understand. They simply accepted the new reality. Humans were now the apex predators of the galaxy, and every other species existed only because humanity allowed it. The age of human dominance had begun with a slap that echoed across the stars, and every alien in the galaxy had heard the message loud and clear. 6 months after the Vorthak incident, the galaxy had become a completely different place. The old power structures had collapsed overnight, replaced by a new reality where humanity stood at the top of every hierarchy. The Zephyrian Empire, which had once been humanity's greatest enemy, now sent daily messages to Earth begging for peace. Ambassador Kell arrived at the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva, carrying the most valuable gift his species could offer: complete surrender, President. Kim Soo-jin sat in the massive conference room surrounded by representatives from dozens of alien species. All of them looked nervous and frightened, like children who had been caught doing something very bad. The conference room itself had been redesigned since the Vorthak incident. The human flag now hung at the center, with all alien flags arranged around it in a circle. This small change sent a clear message about who was really in charge. President Kim Ambassador Kell began his voice, shaking as he spoke. The Zephyrian Empire wishes to formally apologize for all our previous actions against humanity. We want to establish permanent peaceful relations with your people. Your empire enslaved 3,000 human colonists. President, Kim replied in a cold voice, and killed 6,000 more in unprovoked attacks. A simple apology does not seem like enough compensation. The alien ambassador's throat sacs deflated in visible distress. We are prepared to offer anything you desire, he said quickly. 12 star systems as reparations, unlimited access to our technology, complete territorial concessions. Whatever you want. Around the conference table, other alien representatives began making their own desperate offers. The Carillion Syndicate promised to share their advanced medical research. The Veltar Consortium offered exclusive mining rights to rare metals that were worth trillions of credits. Every major alien power was trying to buy humanity's forgiveness and protection. But more importantly, they were trying to make sure they would never face the same fate as planet Vorthak. Secretary of Defense Yoon Hae-won stood up and addressed the gathering. Our terms are simple and non-negotiable, she announced. Any species found enslaving, attacking, or threatening human beings will face immediate and total retaliation. The aliens quickly agreed to every demand without question. They signed the Human Protection Protocols, which made harming any human being a crime punishable. By planetary destruction, the law would be enforced by human warships that could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. But humanity wanted more than just protection. They demanded that every alien government actively work to ensure human safety. This meant alien police forces now spent most of their time hunting down anyone who might pose a threat to humans. Colonel Lee Dong-woo, who had been promoted and given a medal for his actions at Vorthak, now served as Earth's military attaché for alien affairs. He watched the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. It is ironic, he commented to Admiral Park during a break in the negotiations. They created the very monster they now fear by treating us as slaves. Now they are learning that humans have always been apex predators. We just needed a reason to show our teeth. The changes went far beyond politics and military matters. Human colonies, which had once been targets for raiders and pirates, were now the safest places in the galaxy. Alien. Security forces would destroy their own ships rather than risk being seen as a threat to human settlements. Human civilians traveling through alien space were treated like visiting royalty. Entire alien fleets would escort single human transport. Ships just to make sure nothing bad happened to them. The cost of protecting humans was enormous, but no alien government dared to complain on the former Zephyrian world of Nexus Prime. Governor Park Min-jun reviewed the daily reports from his new territory. The planet had been given to humanity as part of the peace settlement and was now being developed as a major human colony. The alien population had welcomed their new human rulers with enthusiasm. They knew that being under human protection meant absolute safety from any external threats. No species in the galaxy would dare attack a world controlled by Earth. Human birth rates were increasing rapidly as parents felt safe bringing children into a galaxy where humanity ruled supreme. Colonial expansion accelerated as worlds that had once been too dangerous for settlement now begged for human presence. The Universal Slavery Abolition Treaty had been signed by every known alien government within 3 months of Vorthak's destruction. Slave markets that had operated for thousands of years simply vanished overnight. Most remarkably, humanity had achieved this complete dominance without firing another shot after Vorthak. The threat of human retaliation was so terrifying that aliens policed themselves. They reported anti-human activity to Earth authorities before it could become dangerous. On worlds throughout the galaxy, alien parents told their children bedtime stories about the importance of respecting humans. The tale of Vorthak became a legend that was passed down through generations. Military academies across the galaxy now studied the Vorthak incident as the perfect example of overwhelming force used to send a message. The destruction of an entire planet in 5 seconds had become the gold standard for decisive action. President Kim reviewed the monthly status reports with deep satisfaction. Humanity had not only survived their introduction to galactic civilization, they had conquered it completely without, becoming the monsters they had fought against. The galaxy now belonged to humanity, not through conquest, but through fear, respect, and the absolute certainty that harming a human being would result in total annihilation. Every alien species understood. This rule, perfectly human dominance, was absolute, and it had all started with a single slap at a slave auction. The echo of that moment would ring through galactic history forever. 1 year after the Vorthak incident, humanity had achieved something that no other species in galactic history had ever accomplished: complete and total dominance over all known civilizations through pure intimidation. The galaxy was now essentially a human empire in all but name. Every major decision made by alien governments was first approved by human representatives. Every trade agreement, military alliance, and territorial dispute was settled according to human wishes. Colonel Lee Dong-woo stood on the observation deck of the newest human warship, HMS Vorthak, named in honor of the planet that had learned humanity's true nature too late. The ship was twice the size of the vessel that had destroyed the original Vorthak and carried enough firepower to eliminate entire solar systems. The HMS Vorthak patrolled the former Zephyrian territories, which were now peacefully administered by human colonial governors. The transition had been remarkably smooth once the aliens realized that human rule meant absolute protection from all external threats. Commander Nam Da-un approached with the daily intelligence reports. "Sir, we have received 23 more requests from alien governments asking permission to establish trade outposts near human colonies. They are offering to pay us tribute for the privilege of doing business in our territory." Approved Dong-woo replied without hesitation. "But remind them of the standard rules. Any alien found within 100 kilometers of a human settlement without proper documentation gets vaporized immediately, no questions asked and no appeals." The rules were harsh, but they were also simple. Every alien in the galaxy understood exactly what would happen if they broke them. This clarity had eliminated most conflicts before they could start. The transformation of galactic civilization was complete and irreversible. What had once been a chaotic collection of competing empires and federations was now a peaceful hierarchy with humanity at the absolute top. The Universal Peace Accord signed by every alien government made human safety the highest priority in galactic law. Alien police forces spent more time and resources protecting humans than they did protecting their own species. The Galactic Protection Fleet was staffed primarily by alien crews serving under human command. These ships patrolled all major space lanes to ensure that no human traveler ever faced danger. The alien crews considered it an honor to serve humanity. Most remarkably, humanity had achieved this transformation without becoming the monsters they had originally fought against. There were no human concentration camps, no systematic oppression of alien species, and no demands for tribute or slaves. Humans simply wanted to be left alone to develop their colonies and raise their families. The fact that every other species in the galaxy now existed purely at human discretion was just a side effect of making that safety possible. On Earth, President Kim Soo-jin prepared her annual State of Humanity address. The speech would be broadcast to every world in the galaxy as was now traditional human words, carried more weight than the pronouncements of any alien emperor or president fellow humans. And honored alien representatives, she began the speech that billions of beings across the galaxy would watch. 1 year ago, our species faced extinction at the hands of slavers and pirates. Today, we stand as the undisputed guardians of galactic civilization. The statistics spoke for themselves. Human colonies had expanded to over 300 worlds. Birth rates were at historic highs, as parents felt safe raising children in a universe where humanity reigned supreme interspecies conflicts. Had dropped to nearly zero since no alien government dared start a war that might accidentally harm human civilians. Trade flowed smoothly under human oversight, and space piracy had been completely eliminated. The galaxy was more peaceful, prosperous, and stable than it had been in thousands of years. All because one alien noble had decided to slap a human prisoner at a slave auction. President Kim continued her speech addressing the alien representatives directly. You have learned that humanity responds to threats with overwhelming force, but you have also learned that we are fair rulers. We do not seek to oppress or exploit other species, we simply demand respect. This balance between absolute power and responsible leadership had made human dominance not just feared but actually welcomed by many alien populations. Life was safer and more predictable under human oversight. On dozens of worlds, alien children learned about human history and values in school. They studied the battle of Vorthak as the moment when true justice came to the galaxy. Many young aliens grew up dreaming of serving humanity in some capacity. The story of Captain Lee Dong-woo had become the most famous tale in galactic history, told in thousands of languages, across millions of worlds. Parents used it to teach their children about courage, dignity, and the consequences of treating others badly. Colonel Dong-woo himself had become something of a living legend among both humans and aliens. He received hundreds of requests each day from alien governments asking him to visit their worlds. His mere presence was considered a blessing that guaranteed safety and prosperity. As he stood on the bridge of HMS Vorthak, watching alien cargo ships carefully maintain respectful distances from human space, Dong-woo reflected on how much had changed. A single moment of violence had triggered a transformation that affected every living being in the galaxy. The aliens had always possessed the knowledge that humans were dangerous. They had seen human soldiers fight with desperate courage in hopeless battles. They had witnessed human civilians sacrifice themselves to protect their children. But they had made the fatal mistake of thinking that human restraint was the same as human weakness. They assumed that because humans tried to be peaceful, they were incapable of being anything else. Now every alien in the galaxy knew the most important rule of interstellar relations: never ever harm a human being. Because humanity's response would be swift, merciless, and absolutely final. The galaxy belonged to humanity now not through conquest, but through the hard-learned wisdom that some species were simply too dangerous to provoke. Humans had become the apex predators of known space, and every other species existed only because humanity allowed it. As Colonel Dong-woo looked out at the stars, he smiled with quiet satisfaction. The age of human dominance had begun with a slap that echoed across the galaxy. And that echo would continue to ring through history for as long as civilized beings traveled among the stars. The lesson was simple and eternal. Treat others with respect or face the consequences. And when it came to humanity, those consequences would be more terrible than any alien mind could imagine.